discuss how it makes you feel when you are the only one or one of the few people of your race, gender, religion, or with your disability in a group such as in a classroom.
When I was the only one or one of the few people who believe in Catholicism, I always felt like I had to hide my religious belief in front of people and places where I felt like they might not believe the same thing. I always felt ashamed to do the sign of the cross, or even like doing a small prayer, stuff like I would do normally at home in public, like such as that before taking an exam, or like even eating my lunch. Even when I'm driving, I usually do the sign of the cross. If there's someone in the car, I would feel a little ashamed of doing that.
Okay. What legal or ethical dilemma has happened within the last 2 years with the population you identify the most with that has made you ashamed or made you advocate or feel compassion for another population of people or an individual who was different from you?
Growing up as a Catholic, being raised in a Catholic household, I always strongly believe in the teachings that I was taught at my church or my youth group or even from my parents. But there's always times where I felt different from what they taught me, such as when it comes to abortion or even like the LGBT community, because they always taught me that God will always love us no matter what we do. But when it comes to the topic of abortion or loving someone of the same gender, to them it's a crime.
Okay. What stereotypes do you think people have about you because of your race, gender, religion, or disability?
I feel like as a Catholic, I always felt like people had a hard time expressing themselves to me because they think that I would see them in a different light or maybe like judge them because it's a topic where other Catholic might see as sinful. But I also felt like a lot of people looked at me as someone who was always a good kid or like a goody-goody or innocent because of my religion. But so when I did stuff that, as low as like putting on makeup at a young age or sneaking out, they all of a sudden look at me different. They're like, oh, you're not a goody-goody anymore. Or
Okay. And then lastly, what impact statement would you like to make on behalf of the group that you identify the most with regarding current affairs or events?
on behalf of being a Catholic, I believe that not everyone will have the same view on certain topics, especially the topic that I emphasize on, such as like the LGBT community or abortion. I always believe that being a good Catholic means to do good deed for your community or society and being grateful for all the things that you have in your life, especially because that's what God gave me.
Okay. Okay.
Discuss how it makes you feel when you're the only one or one of the few people of your race, gender, or religion, or with your disability in a group such as in a classroom.
Whenever I was like the only person or like one of the few Asians in a group, like at school for instance, I remember feeling really inferior and like an outcast. This was especially like apparent during high school, as like the demographics for my high school were primarily white, and there were only like a handful of Asian students in my grade level. And it even so happened that like my only friend during high school, that my best friend, was like also the same race as me. And I just vividly remember like trying very hard to fit in with my classmates and like breaking those stereotypes around my race. I would like even try to dress more like them, like dress really preppy, or like partake in the same hobbies as them, just anything to feel less foreign. And I was like at one point even ashamed to like eat the lunch that my mother would like pack for me because I was afraid of like being judged by others for like having like different meals than them.
What legal or ethical dilemma has happened within the last 2 years with the population you identify the most with that has made you ashamed or made you advocate or feel compassion for another population of people or an individual who was different from you?
So, with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, racism against Asian people have become like heightened, and hate crimes like progressively increased in the U.S. Like I remember on the news, like from verbal slurs, like in the form of microaggressions, to physical assaults towards elders. Asian Americans just continue to face racial abuse that have caused them to live with increased fear and anxiety living through this pandemic. And it's just been a very like eye-opening time frame for me, as seeing people I identify with suffer from discriminatory acts made me feel even more empathetic for other marginalized groups that have also been impacted by racism for so long, such as like African Americans or Native Americans. And it just made me become more self-reflective and aware of my own unconscious biases and the potential negative impact that they could have on others.
And then what stereotype do you think people have about you because of your race, gender, religion, or disability?
So, growing up, I've definitely heard like all types of stereotypes about being Asian, and some of them are very like blatantly like obnoxious, and other ones like might have like not meant any harm, but they still did stick with me. The ridiculous ones would be like all Asians are just good at math, or like do you eat dogs, and just like ridiculous things like that. But then like ones like, oh, where are you from, or like do you speak Chinese, or like how do you say this in this language, and just like stuff like that, where like the intention wasn't meant to hurt me, but it just made me feel like I didn't belong, and made me feel like very uncomfortable, because it was like I was just like someone like foreign from them, and like yeah.
Okay. What impact statement would you like to have? Or what impact statement would you like to make on behalf of the group that you identify with the most regarding the current affair or events?
I think that on behalf of Asian Americans, the statement I want to emphasize the most right now with the current COVID-19 pandemic happening, I would like to highlight that like we also do not wish for the world to be suffering from the pandemic, and we also catch the virus just like any other human being. It's something that's not in our control at all. And so being treated as anything less, and like being treated as like the reason for all of this is just very cruel and unjust. And although it might seem like certain implicit biases towards us like mean no harm, even those can have a significant toll on our physical and mental health, let alone like hate crimes towards like our elders or relatives. Therefore, just please be more mindful of unconscious biases and work together to foster a more positive and inclusive community for not only us, but also future generations to come, which include our future kids and their kids. Yeah.